Alright, so let's get this cracking. So right here we have a depiction of Septimius Severus. He was a Roman emperor who ruled Rome from 193 AD to 211 AD. And again, what prompted me to do this video is because you have the same Caucasian individual that's attempting to debunk certain historical truths that's coming out of mainstream academia in England. And he's basically saying that Septimius Severus wasn't black, he was just merely a North African, Middle Eastern person. But as you can see here, Septimius Severus was a black person. And throughout this video, we're gonna really go deep into it and prove it. But before we get into that, we're gonna just watch a small clip regarding his attempt at debunking mainstream academia.
It's Emperor Septimius Severus, who I mentioned in a recent video, Debunking the Horrible Histories video by the BBC, which claimed that he was black. He was not black. He was absolutely not black. He was a Roman emperor of partial Punic ancestry. The Punic colony of North Africa had been settled by people of Phoenician origin, which means they came from the East Mediterranean, the Levant. That means they're Near Eastern, they're not black, they're sort of Middle Eastern people.
Okay, so right here he said that Septimius Severus was partly of Punic ancestry, and that's correct. He was of Punic ancestry through his father's side, and the Punics were just Phoenicians, or also known as Canaanites. And what this guy doesn't understand is that saying that Septimius Severus was of Punic or Phoenician ancestry is literally proving that he was a black man, because the Phoenicians were black people, unbeknownst to him. And we're going to prove that through the ancient artifacts, and we're going to prove that through historical literature, and we're going to see what the scholars say regarding the Phoenicians.
And they settled in North Africa, where they mixed with North Africans who were also not black. And he likely had also Roman Italian ancestry too, not black. So he definitely wasn't black. There is even probably an apocryphal story about when he encountered an Ethiopian, which is what Ethiopian is the Latin and Greek term, but Latins used it for black people. And there he was very shocked and spooked by the sight of his dark skin. That, even if it's not a true story, it reveals that it was widely understood that North Africans were very, very different from black people, and they would be shocked to even see a black person.
Okay, so right here he said there was a story regarding Septimius Severus seeing an Ethiopian, also known as a Cushite, and being very spooked at this person's appearance because the person was of black complexion. And before he said that the Romans called black people Ethiopian. So he's pretty much trying to pigeonhole black people to the specific term of Ethiopian, when there was many terms that the Romans used to describe black people back then, or different melanated people groups. Like, for example, the people of Mauritania, now known as modern-day Morocco, they were known as what? They were known as Moors. That's where the term Moors come from the ancient region of Mauritania, because of their dark complexion. Then you have the Scots in the British Isles. The term Scot literally means dark or black. It goes back to the Greek word skotos, which means dark. And then you also had the Berbers. The Berbers were known as Berbers not just because of their barbarous nature from the perspective of the Romans. The term Berber also goes back to a person with woolly hair and a black complexion. So the fact that he's trying to just pigeonhole black people to this one specific term of Ethiopia is not responsible. And also the Ethiopians, they were known as Ethiopians way before the time of the Romans. And the reason why they were known as Ethiopians is because of their super, super dark complexion. So the Ethiopians were basically, is another way of saying Nubians, right? But the Nubians were pretty much the inhabitants of southern Egypt. And compared to the other melanated people groups, they were extremely dark of complexion. So that's why Septimius Severus would have been, spooked at this specific person's complexion of Ethiopian origin. It's just like today, you have the people of East Africa, the Nilotic people groups of South Sudan. They're extremely dark of complexion compared to people from the West Coast Africa or the Caribbean or the African Americans or whatnot, their complexion is much darker than those people groups. So a person that's coming from Brazil that goes to South Sudan, even though they're black, they're gonna look at that person's complexion and think, damn, like this person's really, really dark. But it doesn't negate the fact that that Brazilian's also of dark complexion or is also a black person. So it's just the exact same thing back then, just to give some context.
The reason I think Afrocentrics like to think Septimius Severus was black is because some of the frescoes show him with very dark skin. That is quite a normal convention among some people in these Roman frescoes, including, for example, the god Hercules, who's not supposed to be North African or black or anything. But basically, like, people, you always see the women depicted much lighter than the men, because men spend more time outside, so it's seen as being rugged, that they get this dark tan, and women remain indoors in the home and therefore maintain a lighter complexion. And that contrast was, like, showing the difference in gender. So when you can see him next to his wife, she's paler than he is in the frescoes, but he's not a black African.
So yeah, that's the end of that. But yeah, the last bit he wasn't really talking about much, because I guess in this fresco we see Septimius Severus with brown skin and his wife beside him with fair skin. Then you also have his son under him with fair skin too. Because he was pretty much trying to say that women would typically be depicted with fairer or white skin because they were typically indoors and the men were typically outside, so they would be depicted with brown skin. But if that's the case, then you see his son right here? Why is he not depicted with brown skin? Because he just said that the men were supposed to be outside. So hence why they were depicted with brown skin. So we see his son right there who's a male. Why is he not being depicted with brown skin? But here's what it is anyway. We're pretty much just waffling there. We're gonna go through this thoroughly now. Go through some literature regarding the background of Septimius Severus. So here it says, Lucius Septimius Severus was a Roman politician who served as emperor from 193 to 211 AD. He was born in Leptis Magna, present-day Al-Qams, Libya, in the Roman province of Africa. His father was Carthaginian, his mother of Roman descent. So when it says his father was Carthaginian, meaning Punic or Phoenician, because the Phoenicians pretty much established a colony in what is known as present-day Tunisia in 814 AD, and they established an empire over there, and they became known as the Carthaginians or the Punics. Even reading down here it says, Septimius Severus came from a wealthy and distinguished family of Escutchean rank. Severus had Italic and Punic ancestry. The Roman ancestry came from his mother's side, while his Punic ancestry came from his father's side. You see, so Punic and Carthaginian, these terms can be used interchangeably. And regarding the Carthaginians, there's a prominent figure that goes by the name of Hannibal Barca. He was a Carthaginian, and he was a Carthaginian general during the 3rd century AD, and he led out the Carthaginians to war against the Romans in what's known as the Punic Wars. And we're going to see how he looks, because that's who Septimius Severus descends from. So once we see how he looks, it's pretty much going to give us a bit of insight into the true racial ethnicity of Septimius Severus, because as you see, right here is a bust, and here he does look Caucasian here, but this is a modern day rendition. This is a fake. You can, even just by looking at it, you can tell that is a more modernized depiction. This was probably made 100, 200 years ago maybe. And that's a part of the whitewashing. This wasn't made during his lifetime. Like, there's no wear and tear. You can see that you can see the freshness of the bust. So now we're gonna go through some background regarding Hannibal Barca. It says Hannibal was a Carthaginian general and statesman who commanded the forces of Carthage in their battle against the Roman Republic during the Second Punic War. Here's a fake bust. This is not him at all. at all. Here it says Hannibal was one of the sons of Hamilcar Barca, a Carthaginian leader and an unknown mother. He was born in what is present-day northern Tunisia, one of the many Mediterranean regions colonized by the Canaanites from their homelands in Phoenicia, a region corresponding with the Mediterranean coast of modern Lebanon and Syria. So that's what I was talking about. So the Canaanites, also known as Phoenicians, colonized the region known as present-day Tunisia, and they became known as the Carthaginians or the Punics. And again, another fake coin of Hannibal Barca. It says the obverse may depict Hannibal with the traits of a young Melkart. The reverse features one of his famous war elephants. Yeah, it's nonsense. This is not Hannibal. It's not Hannibal Barca at all. We're going to see the true representation of Hannibal Barca. So right here, this is a true illustration of Hannibal Barca. As you can see, the full lips, the broad nose, and the woolly hair. A black African all day long. All day long. Here it says, Hannibal Barca, the coin of Hannibal Barca, are said to be carbon dated to the time of Hannibal, 247 to 183 BC, while later European-looking images of the Carthaginian general are reportedly dated a century or more after his death. Look at that. So that's the coin we saw on Wikipedia, the European-looking version. According to this, it was made a century after his death, while this one was made during his lifetime. Here's another one. Again, same features, same thing, just a different color. Again, same thing, just a different color. So this is the man in whom Septimius Severus descended from. Now we're gonna see some more. Let's go through some more coins regarding the Phoenicians or the Carthaginians. So here, again, the same people group. These are Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Punics. We see the full lips, the broad nose, clear as day. And just to get some background on these depictions, it says classical Phoenician scarabs were made in Phoenicia in the period of the Achaemenid Persian Empire from the later 6th century to the mid-4th century BC. Beside the Etruscan, they are the last major production of scarab seals of antiquity. They are made of green jasper, the color probably being of as much importance as their intaglius since it enhances their amuletic value. Most of the 1,500 examples known have been found in West Phoenician, in brackets, Punic, cemeteries of Carthage, Sardinia, and Ibiza, in brackets, Spain. But there are also many also from the East Mediterranean. It was long held that all were Western products, but it is more likely on many other grounds that they were made in the Phoenician homeland. They served as jewelry, as offerings in tombs and sanctuaries, and for their primary function of sealing, many were given precious metal mounts. So that's just to give a bit of background. That's just to show you that these scarabs that I'm going to show you are Phoenicians or Carthaginians. So again, this is an example. It says Carthage, Janiform bearded and beardless. See that? Another example, again, same thing, full lips, broad nose. This one's taken from Ibiza, aka Spain. Another one, same thing, full lips and a broad nose, African features, from Ibiza, aka Spain. You got this one right here, in Madrid, also Spain. Again, these are undeniable. Got some more here from Cagliari. So this was taken from Italy, because Cagliari is a region in Italy. Then you got some more here. These are Phoenicians. This is taken from Pharos. Okay. Then you got some more here from Carthage. Again, you see the full lips. That's clear as day. And you've got another person here. Now we're seeing the woolly hair, and we're seeing pretty much the same African features. It's just the same thing over and over again. And even here we have a Phoenician bust that was found in Spain. And they were finding these Phoenician artifacts in Spain, Italy, and all these different Mediterranean regions because the Phoenicians were establishing colonies in those regions. So that's why there was so much artifacts that were being found in Southern Europe, because the Phoenicians had a monopoly over these regions during a certain time period. Alright, so now we're going to go through some literature regarding Hannibal Barca and the Carthaginians slash Phoenicians slash Canaanites. So this excerpt is from a book called Sex and Race, Volume 1, Negro Caucasian Mixing in All Lands, in All Ages and All Lands, The Old World, Volume 1 by J.A. Rogers, published in 2014, and really was published in the 1940s, but this is just a later edition. So here it says, Hannibal and his African troops must have brought a great deal of Negro strain into the Roman population. For 13 years, they dominated the peninsula from the Alps to Naples. Hannibal himself was a full-blooded Negro with woolly hair, as his coins show. His wife was Spanish and perhaps white. So here, the author recognizes what we've analyzed through the coins of Hannibal Barca, that being the woolly hair and the Negro features. It says, as in Egypt and Greece, the blacks also wielded considerable influence in religion. They established the cult of Isis, which spread through the Roman Empire as far as Paris, France, and Britain. This cult received additional prestige when Julius Caesar brought Cleopatra and her son Caesar to Rome and set them up in magnificent style. The earliest North Africans were, as was said, the Negritos. Berthelone and Chantry, leading authorities on the anthropology of North Africa, also placed them as the first, a position which, it appears, they continued to enjoy to a high degree well into the historic period, as finds from the ancient graves have revealed. Berthelone and Chantry say of the skeletons from these graves, some characters possess marked Negroid traits, and such are not always persons of no importance. Indeed, the celebrated priestess of Tanit showed numerous Negroid traits, marked prognathism, flat wide nose, long forearm, and had the physical traits of the Neolithic Negroes. In still another sarcophagus, with rich belongings, they found the form of a woman who presented marked Negro characteristics. Ratzel and Reclus have also spoken of the marked Negro strain in the North African peoples. The former says Negroes crossed the Alps with Hannibal and fell at Worth beside McMahon. Whatever their original nature may have been, all this population must have been alloyed with a strong Ethiopian element. The entire Semitic and Hamitic population of Africa has, in other words, a mulatto character, which extends to the Semites outside Africa. Hannibal, most famous of all Carthaginians, was a Negro, as was said. Right, so here we just read some literature regarding anthropologists and archaeologists going through these various artifacts and these skeletons and all these remains, and they found a large Negro element within these Phoenician populations and these populations in North Africa where the Phoenicians dwelt. So, now we have the literature that backs up or that links up with the artifacts that we've just viewed. So now here we have another piece of literature called Black Heroes in World History, Tuesday Magazine, by Tuesday Magazine 1969. And here it says, and Gilbert Pickard points out, The majority of the Punic, in brackets Carthaginian populace, seems to have had African, indeed Negroid ancestry. The reason for that, as Audicio wrote, is simple. So yeah, I couldn't acquire the full book on Google Books. It only gave me this small excerpt, but again, there's another scholar that recognizes these things. In the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let every word be established. So we've had these. So in the mouth of at least 3 to 4 to 5 scholars, they're coming to the same conclusion when they're analyzing these artifacts. So it's clear as day. Now to conclude this video, I just want to go through some ancient coinage regarding Septimius Severus and some of his family members. So here we have Septimius Severus, and as we can see, he has the woolly hair and the somewhat full lips. Much like Hannibal Barca, we can see that he is a black man, or at the very least a mixed race man, because we read that Septimius Severus' father was of Punic/Phoenician descent, meaning a black African, and his mother was of Roman descent. And back then Rome was a multi-ethnic society, much like America is today. So just like today, a person, a Chinese man or a so-called black man or a Caucasian person or Indian person, they could be classed as American. It's much like back then in ancient Rome, an Israelite, a Moor, an Arab, a Canaanite, Phoenician, whatever, they could have been classed as a Roman due to them having a Roman citizenship. But that didn't necessarily denote their ethnicity. So just like we read in the scriptures about the Apostle Paul, he was an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, according to Romans 11:1. But when you read the book of Acts, we see that he was also known as a Roman because of his citizenship. So it's much like then. So even a Caucasian person back then, they could have been known as a Roman. So here we see another coin, and even in this coin, the features are much more pronounced regarding the lips. Another coin here. Here to the left is his son, Emperor Caracalla, who reigned from 211 AD to 217 AD. And here you see the pronounced lips and the broad nose. And here's the depiction that the Caucasian man was showing in the video. And what I wanted to show here was right here is supposed to be his son Caracalla, and here's his other son Geta. And you see right here, the hands, they still have the brownish paint on it. But his face has been fully smudged. So that's how you know that there was something nefarious that was done to this painting. So the face would have been initially white. I mean, the face would have initially matched the painting on the hand, which would have been brown. And it would have been the same thing with Caracalla. I'm going to show you a bust of Caracalla to show that he was a black man as well. Because Caracalla was, he was whitewashed in this depiction too. But for whatever reason, they kind of left Septimius Severus as it is. And there's supposed to be his wife. I believe his wife's name is Julia Domna, and she was of Arab descent. So she wouldn't even have looked like this either, because the Arabs were brown/dark complexion 2,000 years ago. Right now you see the Arabs, a lot of them may look like this because of the various admixture, but back then they were extremely dark in complexion. So here it says the Severan Tondo shows Septimius Severus, his wife Julia Domna, the younger son Caracalla, lower right of picture, and the obliterated image of his murdered co-heir Geta. So now here's a bust of Caracalla. And again, clear as day, you can see the full lips and you can see the afro. And they kind of chipped off the nose a bit. I'm not too sure if it was naturally done through wear and tear or if they actually did it themselves. I'm not too sure, but yeah. Despite that, you can still see that it's a black man. And this current bust is located in the British Museum. So here's some literature regarding Septimius Severus's complexion. It says, the reason given for the last is that Severus, being born in Africa, was of a very black and swarthy complexion, and that thence the dyke was termed Grim's dyke. So again, we have the literature that coincides with the artifacts. It says black and swarthy complexion, and the term swarthy is just a German word that means black. So it's clear as day, there's no way of going around this. And the source for this is it was a source published in 1820 called Memoirs of the Ancient Alliance between France and Scotland. Now here, his wife, Julia Domna, we see some pronounced features regarding the lips. It says Roman Empire silver denarius of Julia Domna, wife of Septimius Severus. And again, we see the same thing, the full lips and the somewhat pronounced nose. It's clear as day, man. So his whole family was melanated. And that Caucasian person in the video, he didn't go through all these sources. He's just giving you a 2-minute clip and he's expecting you to believe him. Without no sources, no documentation, nothing, no artifacts, nothing. Saying, oh yeah, they're North African. What's that supposed to mean? So he wants us to believe that the modern day inhabitants of North Africa look the same now. So he basically wants us to believe that the modern day inhabitants of North Africa are the same now as they were 2,000 years ago. That's not how things work. The inhabitants of North Africa back then were different groups of melanated people, different groups of African/Israelites/ whatever. But they were what you would class as so-called black, as black people today. But it seems to me as if these people don't understand or grasp the concept of migration patterns. It's just like Australia today. The Aborigines of Australia are what they're small compared to the Caucasian populace in Australia today. But 2,000 years ago, you wouldn't have seen one Caucasian in Australia. It would have been filled with the Aboriginal people groups, who are dark melanated people. So there's such a thing called migration patterns. There's such a thing called colonization. There's such a thing called war and conquer. This is what happened over the course of years. Over the course of time. And it's the same thing in North Africa. It's the same thing in Europe. It's the same thing in America. So yeah, man, that's just it, man. That would just conclude the video there, though, man.